Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over the round 2 predictions in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. My predictions personally in round 1, they started out hot and they finished awfully not, so we will go over those as well. Let me know how your brackets did in round number 1 and what you thought of the playoffs early on. And if you're there already and you haven't subscribed, subscribe. All right, let's get into the video. All right, now if you joined my community bracket challenge, you're still in the running for a free copy of NHL 23 for the contest of your choosing. So as we take a look, Nolan absolutely drilled the first round, calling pretty much everything. Colorado in 4, St. Louis in 6, Calgary in 7, which is a really bold call in my opinion. Edmonton in 6, he missed out on that one. Florida in 6, which he had right. Tampa Bay in 7, Carolina in 6, he had that one missed, and then the New York Rangers moving on as well. So congratulations, Nolan. He's the one that you've got to track down here and trying to make up some ground, but he has got an awful good-looking bracket here in the first round. All right, so all the way down in 230th out of 442. We'll take a look at my bracket and see how things went. So let's just start up in the top left with the Colorado Avalanche sweeping the Nashville Predators. I called that one, as did pretty much everybody else. This was a really easy series in my opinion. Once Saros was out, even if he was in, it really wouldn't have mattered. They just looked absolutely dominant, and with how the other Western teams look in favorable matchups, it just kind of leads me to believe that what everyone expects for the most part with the Colorado Avalanche kind of just running right through the West, it looks like that's more and more of a possibility. So I called that one right. I also called St. Louis. I had them in 7. They were able to beat the Minnesota Wild in 6. Let's talk quickly about the Minnesota Wild. I've been pretty critical of them, not because they performed poorly this year. I think that they really needed to win this year. The pressure on that franchise is at an all-time high because next year you really start to see the impacts of the Suter and Parise buyouts as $12 million goes against the cap, but that isn't even the worst part because the 2 seasons after that, so 3 in total, $14 million in dead cap, which is absolutely devastating, not just to the Wild, to any franchise. I would love, if anyone knows, please give me a comment. I asked this on stream, but you weren't really able to find this info, but if you know, what was the last time a Stanley Cup champion had that low of a cap hit? I would love to know what the cheapest, I mean, obviously going back to right after the first lockout, but over the last like 10 years, what was the cheapest cap hit to win a Stanley Cup? Because it is going to be awfully difficult. You got to think Kevin Fiala is probably gone. They're not going to be able to afford him. I mean, you have $12 million in just dead cap. You're going to have to lose it somewhere. Maybe Dumba. I'm not really sure, but Minnesota Wild fans, let me know what you expect. I would love to hear your thoughts. St. Louis, man, they are, I don't want to say a boring team, but they are just a perfect playoff team. They have scoring throughout their entire lineup. When their big players, their first liners like Tarasenko or Riley don't perform well, they have the most 20 goal scorers in the entire playoffs. They had a ton of it. And then when Husso struggled, Binnington came in, and it's wild what a goalie change in the playoffs does. And I'm starting to think more and more it's not so much about the goaltender you put in, but if you saw it in other series that we're going to talk about, it's just that it's so hard to score in the playoffs for the most part, even though there was probably the most score we've ever seen. It is very difficult to score in the playoffs because everyone plays a lot tighter. The defense is a lot sharper, but Binnington looked phenomenal, and he is going to be up against it in Colorado. In the second round, I have Colorado beating St. Louis, and I know it doesn't make you give a games prediction there, but I will give them 6, and it won't be like a good 6, like it goes to overtime. Like I think they, St. Louis is able to win 2, maybe 1 at home, force a game 6, but after that, I really don't see it going any further. All right, down here, series just ended last night. Calgary and Dallas. I mean, I don't think anyone saw, outside of Nolan, who's in first place, saw Calgary having that hard of a time with Dallas. Dallas, if they were to win last night, they gave me, last year's Montreal Canadian vibes, although with a little bit more talent up front. They just were able to hang in there. Ottinger put in a goaltender performance for the ages, but it wasn't enough. Calgary looks like if St. Louis looks like a great playoff team, Calgary looks like a perfect playoff team, other than Florida I'm talking about in the West. So we'll have to wait and see if maybe just surviving that round sparks them enough to move on, because they have all the pieces necessary to go on a lengthy run here. And they are going to be taking on the Edmonton Oilers. Again, another series I had no faith think that it would go that long. I said Edmonton in 6, but again, much like I said about St. Louis and Colorado, not a long 6 where it feels like both teams are in it. I feel like the LA Kings took advantage of a weak Pacific Division. That's really what it looked like. There was no Vegas, no Sharks. The Kraken were what most people thought the Kraken should be in an expansion era. It was just awful, and I feel like their rookies did enough to get them into the playoffs, but did not do enough in the playoffs. They're just not ready. I think the LA is going to run the conference in a couple years, unfortunately. For myself, obviously, as a Sharks fan, it's going to be painful to see LA go through. If all of their prospects, not even all of them, just most of them, they are probably going to run the Western Conference, although goaltending is going to be an issue at some point. Quick looked like he was turning back the clock a little bit in a few of those games. There was a few where it looked like the Jonathan Quick of the last 4 years, but we'll see what happens. Dustin Brown, see you later. And moving on to the second round, we've got the Battle of Alberta, one of the best series when the playoffs started. This is what everyone wanted, and we finally got it. So Calgary and Edmonton. Edmonton struggled. It's funny because Edmonton's struggling with LA. You'd be like, oh, it's Calgary automatically, but it's not like Dallas was much better. Dallas was an awful team when you consider goals for and goals against, and just how they played, but they really buckled down. McDavid in that series against LA, I don't know if we've, in my lifetime, ever seen one individual dominate a game and take it over like McDavid can. It's absolutely incredible. If it was anyone in net for Edmonton other than Mike Smith, I would give Edmonton a real shot here, but I think it will be in Calgary in 6. Wouldn't surprise me about 7. I hope it's as rough and a brutal series that everyone is expecting. I really do, because this could be a really, really fun series. I'm going to say Calgary in 6. All right, moving over to the Eastern Conference, I did call Florida. I said in 5, they went 6. And man, if it wasn't for a couple comebacks, I mean, they really showed what Toronto didn't, and we'll talk about Toronto in a little bit. They really, they looked like an inexperienced team early on in that series. They got down and were about to trail in the series later on. I believe it was game 5, and was able to roar back in that game 5, I believe down 3-0, and able to just really take over the series there. And their roster is just stacked from top to bottom. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how they play in the next round against Tampa, but I think everything is lined up perfectly for Florida to go on a really lengthy run. They just needed to get out of their own way against Washington, who was a very veteran team, a team that has done and had success in the playoffs before, which I think is extremely important, because, without playoff success, you really can't draw on anything when you're in, having issues losing certain games like Toronto, for example. But I think that Florida is primed for a great run. Toronto. It pains me that Toronto is this bad, or has been on this bad of a run. My old man is a diehard Leaf fan, and I grew up as a Leafs fan before I, saw my first Sharks game and was like, damn, I would love to see them do well, at least for my old man one more time. He was 7 last time they won the Cup. So that being said, it's so odd because all of the past loss for Toronto, it was like, where are the big guns? You pay 4 players so much of the cap. Where are they? I'm not gonna lie, I was hard on Tavares early on in the series because he was awful. He just really didn't do much. Not for $11 million. People started quoting he was good defensively when analytically was not, and his face-off rating. And if you're paying $11 million for a face-off rating, I apologize, but that's just absolutely ridiculous argument. However, I believe it was in game 5 and 6, he really came alive and looked like a top-end player. That being said, though, Marner looked incredible throughout the whole series, in my opinion. So did Matthews, Morgan Riley. They just ran into the back-to-back Stanley Cup champion. I think that playoff experience is necessary for moments like game 6, when you're in overtime, and you find ways to get it done if you are a champion or built to be one. And Toronto just cannot have that big moment. They cannot. I thought when they were trailing in a prior game, when they rattled back 3 straight goals, that was impressive. And it was the way that they did it, because it was all of their big guns. And then in game 7, it's just wild. I don't know. As a Sharks fan, I saw this kind of thing happen in their 15-year run, but it was always in the second round or even the third. They just couldn't get over the hump. I don't know what you do in Toronto, because you cannot trade the big 4 and get anything close to value. People always want to go to that, but you have to think realistically. If you move Nylander, who is probably the best bang for your buck of those 4, if you move Tavares, you are not getting anything close to that level of player in return. And I mean, you can go back and look at the Joe Thornton trade. That's exactly what happens when you trade the clear best player in the trade. That is usually what happens. So I don't know what they do. It's going to be a mess. And what the worst part about it is it makes the season just, you guys, like Toronto Maple Leafs fans, you guys aren't even excited until this time next year. You've got a full calendar year, because I've been through it too. The regular season means absolutely absolutely nothing. And even the first round, it's like, how can you be excited? You just expect them to lose. I don't know what happens there, but my goodness, Tampa, they looked like they were exhausted for the majority of that series. They survived. I don't think they won. I think they survived. Braden Point took a gross injury in game 7. He's doubtful and not playing in game 1 against Florida. I think that this is where Tampa just runs into an absolute buzzsaw because they've won 2 Stanley Cups in 8 months. It's just too much hockey. At a certain point, you just, like, you can't keep playing, expect a human to play that much hockey in this course of a year and a half. And I think Florida will run right through Tampa. I would say 5 or I'll give them 6. And then down here, I was really wrong in the Carolina-Boston series. I thought it was going to be a cruise for Carolina, and then Boston comes roaring back. I've said this the last couple of years, but I'm really biased with Boston because I don't like them, and I don't know why, because I'm a big Red Sox and Patriots fan. I couldn't tell you why I don't like the Bruins. Maybe it's because I grew up a Leafs fan. I have no idea. But I always view them as very, very top-heavy, and they had goaltender issues at the beginning of the series, and Carolina looks like a very well-rounded roster that no one talks about it because it's Carolina Hurricanes. Just no one watches them outside of their market, really. So you don't get to see them in the spotlight until you're in the playoffs, and they look very, very strong. They were on their 3rd-tier goaltender. Ranta looks phenomenal, and they look like they have a great roster that could go on a real run here to the conference final. Now, they are going to be taking on the New York Rangers, and here is where I will admit I was completely wrong. I will say this. Hockey, to win a Stanley Cup, requires more luck than any other of the 4 professional sports in North America. I think that to win a Stanley Cup, if you do not have a few moments of just insane luck, things break your way, you just simply can't win a Stanley Cup. I think if you go back to every single run, you will see moments in overtime, a penalty not called, those kinds of things, a shot that goes off the board, off the stanchion, off a shin pad and in. I think if you don't have that, it doesn't happen. The Rangers come back down from 3-1. They deserve full marks for that. They took advantage of every piece of luck that they had, and that is a big, important piece. Like, that's something huge. I mean, no Crosby for game 6. He's out. They have to battle, like, Louis Domingue, played great, but it is what it is. I think as the series went along, they took advantage, like, no Crosby in game 6, they probably lose that game. It was very, I don't know, it was very close. I just think that had everything stayed healthy and in the way that it was, even in their game 7, the Zibanejad goal to tie it 3-3, the helmet comes off, and if that's not a rule, that goal doesn't happen more than likely. Now, Pettersson, it's his fault for standing there and just yelling for no reason, trying to get a penalty, as opposed to picking up his helmet and putting it back on, which you're allowed to do. I've seen a lot of, like, actual NHL players come out and say that that's a garbage rule in itself, but nonetheless, it's there. If that moment, like, if that crash behind the net that results in Pettersson's helmet coming off, we're probably not talking about the Rangers moving. And those are the things that in hockey you just can't account for. But nonetheless, coming back down 3-1 with how young that team is huge for their development. I said this early on. I think that the Rangers are much like the LA Kings. I think the Rangers are going to run the Eastern Conference probably in two years. Once Lafreniere and Kakko get going, Kakko looked good in this series. He did not look good in the regular, so good to see him come alive. And then Shesterkin, it looked like he was really battling himself early on in that series, but then held them in it all the way through, and all the power to him. That was incredible. Now they're going up against Carolina. I'm not going to lie, same kind of thing for me. I don't believe that the Rangers are ready yet. I think, again, that they're a couple years away. I think this is Carolina's series, and I'm going to say Carolina it's very hard to go 5 games this second round on. I'll say Carolina in 7 games. I will say they make it scrappy at MSG. I will say 7 games. All right, guys, so those are my round 2 predictions. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. This has been one of the best Stanley Cups so far. I've loved every game. Make sure you follow me along on Twitter at NoSleevesGaming. Love to talk hockey during the playoffs. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.